Donald Trump's presidency shook the global stage with tariff sanctions and a promise of America first. But did the strategy secure America's future or accelerate the rise of the BRICS? Hello and welcome to today's exploration of a pivotal moment in global politics. This intersection of Donald Trump's America First policy and the rise of BRICS nations. Trump's presidency influenced the global economic scene and how the BRICS coalition, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, responded with their vision for a multipolar world. Let's dive right in. Introducing the Trump era, Donald Trump's presidency wasn't just another presidential terms in the United States. From the moment he took office, he promised to abandon traditional diplomatic norms and put America first. This promise appealed to people who felt that the United States had been losing jobs, influences, and respect on the world stage. Many of his supporters wanted a leader who would oppose nations that in their eyes took advantage of America's wealth and open market. To fulfill his pledge, Trump's administration used strong rhetoric and bold strategies, most visible through the tariffs. These tariffs were placed on goods entering the United States from countries that the administration believed threatened American businesses' interests. While these sanctions were meant to protect United States workers and industries, they had far-reaching implications. Other nations, especially those in the BRICS bloc, saw these moves as hostile or at least deeply concerning. The immediate impact of these tariffs was clear. Trade tensions escalated, international negotiations became more strained, and long-standing alliances were tested. But to understand why Trump's policies generated such dramatic effects, we need to look more closely at what the BRICS is and why it matters so much to global affairs. BRICS, a growing force. The BRICS might sound like just another international acronym, but it represents a group of 5 countries with fast-growing economies and increasing global influence. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have been working together to challenge the current world economic order, which is often dominated by Western countries and institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. De-dollarization is one of the most significant steps of the BRICS nations to recent years. This process involves trading with each other in currencies other than the US dollar and setting up financial institutions that reduce the dependence on the global dominance of the greenback. When nations don't rely on the dollar, they're less vulnerable to US sanctions and financial pressures. For instance, if the US threatens to cut country off the dollar-based payment system, the impact is huge, but only if the country actually needs dollars to conduct trade. So why does the US care about the BRICS? The power of the US dollar is deeply tied to the nation's global influence. If more countries join the BRICS in de-dollarization, America's ability to impose sanctions, control financial flows, and the shape of international policies diminish. During Trump's presidency, tension over the issues reached new levels. Trump's tariffs and tough rhetoric seemed aimed at squashing any efforts that might weaken America's long-held financial advantage. High risk, high stake. Trump's administration tariff strategy was both bold and controversial. Rather than softly negotiating or making concessions, the White House took a hard line. China in particular became a prime. Tariffs weren't only levied against China. Other BRIC countries also felt the heat by raising the cost of imported goods. Trump intended to protect US manufacturers and workers from what he viewed as unfair competition. However, this policy carried a hidden risk. For one, tariffs often provoke retaliation measures. When the US raises tariffs on goods from other countries, the country might respond by imposing tariffs on Americans' goods. This can create a cycle of tit-for-tat actions, hurting businesses and consumers on both sides. For instance, if you were a farmer in the Midwest and suddenly your soybeans face higher tariffs in China, you might struggle to compete in that market. Such back-and-forth battles can lead to economic uncertainty and higher prices at home. Critics also warn that alienating major economic partners might push them to seek alternatives, which is precisely what BRICS was already doing. With the possibility of more US tariffs and sanctions, BRICS countries accelerated plans to trade among themselves and set up parallel financial systems. That way, if they were locked out of the dollar-based commerce, they could still keep their economies running. The BRICS the long game. While Trump's America First plan aimed for quick results and immediate economic wins, BRICS took a long-term approach to reshaping the global financial order. They established the new development bank as a rival to the Western-dominated institution like the IMF. They also pursued currency agreements, making it easier to trade without touching the US dollar. Furthermore, they worked on establishing new payment systems so that they wouldn't have to rely on networks heavily influenced by American regulations or sanctions. Trump's administration viewed these moves as a direct threat. If BRICS could succeed in de-dollarization, the US could lose some of its unique advantages, such as ability to sanction foreign banks by denying them access to dollar transactions. However, critics argue that the administration's combative stance might backfire by speeding up the very process they hope to stop. When countries feel cornered, they often become more determined to find ways around the reliance of the dollar. The battle of perception. One of the most significant outcomes of Trump's policy was change in how many nations perceived the United States. Over the decades, America had built alliances around the globe, positioning itself as both a democratic leader and a genuine trading partner. However, the sudden imposition of tariffs, along with the use of strong, controversial language, made some allies question whether the US was as reliable as they once thought. When the trust and cooperation when nations look for other partners or bands together to form new alliances. For BRICS, this meant a chance to attract more countries to its cause. Nations that felt slighted or were worried about the US unpredictability start to consider economic arrangements the BRICS proposed. Even if they don't fully commit to the de-dollarization, they kept their options open, reinforcing the idea that the US-led financial order was no longer the only game in town. Short-term wins versus long-term losses. Trump's approach did produce short-term benefits, at least for a certain point of view. Supporters argue that the tariffs forced renegotiations of trade deals, such as revamped North America Free Trade Agreement, that's now known as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Businesses that felt threatened by cheaper imports saw at least temporary relief, and the administration pointed to these measures as proof that America First was working. Yet on the global stage, a broader shift was unfolding. Tariffs highlighted the vulnerabilities of countries that depend on the US market rather than hoping for eventual return to the old rules. Many countries decided to plan for a future where America might not be the ultimate financial powerhouse. The more the US used tariffs as a weapon, the more the other nations explored alternative trade routes as well as alternative reserve currencies. Changing economic landscape. Beyond Trump's tariffs, technology, and digital finance, they were reshaping the global economy. During this presidency, cryptocurrency, digital payment platforms, and blockchain-based systems started to gain traction. Some of BRICS nations explored creating their own digital currencies, a move that could further reduce reliance on the US dollar. By the time Trump left office, the world had already seen how quickly financial systems could adapt and evolve, especially when they're motivated by external pressure from tariffs and sanctions. Lessons for future policy makers. So what lessons can future US leaders draw from the Trump era's clash with the BRICS? Long-term planning, while immediate gains may look good politically, ignoring global trends can backfire. The rise of emerging markets and the push for de-dollarization won't vanish just because of a short-term victory. Diplomatic nuance, working with allies rather than alienating them, yields better outcomes. Yields no depth. Diplomacy might seem slow or old-fashioned. It prevents countries from feeling cornered in alliance with the US. Financial landscape evolves rapidly. New technologies, trade networks mean global dominance isn't guaranteed. Policy must adapt to these shifts if the country wants to maintain influence. Constructive engagement, sometimes inviting rival nations to negotiate standards, norm of fair trade rules, can be more effective than trying to block them out. Engagement might slow creation of rival structures by making them less necessary. And what's the larger picture? Trump's presidency acts as a catalyst for many of these global shifts, but it didn't create them from scratch. Even before the election, BRICS had been plotting a course for more balanced global order. His tariffs and tough talk merely accelerated the process in the grand scheme. The American First era marked as a critical point where the United States confronted a rapidly changing world, sometimes with policies that spurred those changes even faster. The outcome is a global economic landscape that is more fragmented than the multipolar than ever before. BRIC continues to strengthen, adding layers to its financial and political cooperation. Meanwhile, the US must decide how best to protect its interests in the world that is no longer automatically centered around American priorities. A parting reflection: it's too early to say if Donald Trump's America First approach will be judged as a successful defense for US economic leadership or a strategic miscalculation that hastened the end of the dollar-centric order that might lie somewhere in between. Indeed, the administration sparked conversations about the trade imbalance and the need for fairer deals, but it also taught the emerging powers can band together to find alternatives when the global power tries to defend its dominance too aggressively. Looking ahead, one thing is clear: the story doesn't end with Trump's tariffs. The push for de-dollarization, the rise of a new digital currency, and the evolving alliance among emerging nations, all pointing to further where multiple centers of influence compete on the world stage. The United States and any other nation will need creative foresight and genuine cooperation to thrive in the landscape shaped by the ambition of both established and emerging groups. As the global economic landscape transforms, the Trump era serves as a turning point, one that may have fueled the very change it aimed to prevent. Leave a comment so we can keep the conversation going, and thanks for watching.